Mobley. She is a podcast host and co-founder at Beauty of the Nile. Her brand makes science-based skincare and skincare-infused makeup for skin of color. Beauty of the Nile podcast is a leading destination for skincare and beauty information. For skincare, beauty focus on helping women of color best care for and love your brown skin. Ladies, welcome to the March into Beauty panel. I do want to start off with a definition of beauty. Beauty is a combination of qualities such as shape, color, or form that pleases the aesthetic senses, especially the sight. Starting with Jasmine, in your own words, how do you define beauty?
First of all, thank you for having me. This is so exciting. I think for me, beauty has a lot to do. I mean, there's obviously what we all think of as beauty in terms of what people see, but I think for me, I try to focus a lot on how I feel about myself and what I put out into the world. And I think, you mentioned we say a lot at Beauty of the Nile, love your brown skin. And the real reason for that is because for a long time, people of color felt like, our skin isn't beautiful enough, no matter how dark it is, it's too dark, and if it were lighter, it would be better. And it's hard to feel beautiful if you're constantly being told that you're not. So really pouring into myself and those sorts of things are what I think of as beauty, caring for myself, doing my skincare, all those things, or what I think of beauty. I think it's an inside out job, but also I do love skincare, so.
Yeah. And same question for you, Gabby. In your own words, how do you define beauty?
I define beauty as just having knowledge and confidence in oneself. I think if you truly know yourself and you're confident in the person you are, that's beauty.
Have beauty standards changed, and how do beauty standards affect society?
Yeah, I think beauty standards have started to change. I think one of the ways that they've started to change, though, is sort of before it was we pretend that diversity didn't exist and we don't really care. We're colorblind, right? We don't see color. But I think when you do that, then you don't see someone's humanity. You don't understand what makes them who they are. And I think now in mainstream media or in mainstream beauty, we're seeing a lot more tokenization of beauty, right? Where it's okay, quick, we gotta have somebody black, we have to have somebody Asian, and quick, versus actually understanding the women who you're creating products for or building a brand for and those sorts of things. So I think it's changing, and I hope that we can be part of a change where it's really authentic and you truly understand who you're serving and you care about them and you understand why they may be different and don't run away from the fact that they're different and that there's so much uniqueness in all of us. So that's weird.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Thanks for the support.
Her answers are going to be so much more.
You can just be like what she said.
So what she said, but I think social media has a lot to do with it. We're always seeing new trends every few minutes, every few seconds. So I definitely think beauty standards are changing on a weekly basis, on a daily basis.
And in a positive manner, right?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes.
I feel like you're seeing more different types of people on social media now, which I think is great. And I think because of this push for diversity, whether it's authentic or not, I think it gives opportunity for more people to use their voice and be out on social media. But also, we were talking before, you see some crazy things on TikTok.
You do.
And I think there's still the traditional standard of beauty still exists. I think people are just pretending it doesn't. And so I would love for us to be in a place where all beauty is truly celebrated and that we truly see people for who they are. I think that's what's missing.
Is that what inspired you to start Beauty of the Nile?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so for everybody who doesn't know, Beauty of the Nile has been around for a long time. It's actually my co-founders and my parents, which is such a big blessing. And I think growing up in our house, we saw beauty in all shades. It was celebrated, it was talked about in a positive way. We didn't shy away from it. And then when I went out into the world and started having more conversations as a young girl and a young woman, I was wait, not everybody thinks like this. Not everybody appreciates everybody's beauty. And so for us, it was really how can we start to have more positive conversation around skin of color? How can we create products that are actually created for skin of color as the first thought and not the afterthought? And when I say that, I think people are oh my God, amazing. But really, scientifically, we work with dermatologists and estheticians of color, and our skin actually has a lot of scientific differences. And nobody's really focusing on that. Nobody's really talking about that. And so it's really hard to, how can you tell someone to love themselves and be well, why aren't people of color just loving themselves? Or why aren't you just confident in yourself? You'll hear that narrative a lot. And it's like, how can you be if brands aren't representing you, if media is telling you that you're not beautiful, if, all these things, right? And it doesn't have to be like, I think people think and brands think, oh, you have to be hateful to be considered, colorist or racist. That's not necessarily true. It's like, who are you putting in front of the camera? Who's behind the camera? Who are the products actually created for? So what we really want to do is create products that are science-based and effective, that work for our skin because we deserve that and no one's doing that. And then also make sure that through our podcast and through all of our marketing that we're really working to reject colorism, and we'll always say love your brown skin, and to us that means love your skin in every shade, and help lift each other up. So yes, I would say that's how we got here a bit. Yeah.
Yes.
Amen.
We're grateful that your passion has, transformed into a product line that we can all get behind. And you can tell with your passion, like, it's going to be amazing. And some of us here have been blessed to even be one of your models. So I can't wait for the launch and for everyone else to see all the effort that you've put into your work. And then we got to see it today with Essence. So it was beautiful. It's really easy to use, and that's going to be in everyone's makeup bag.
It's in mine.
It's in mine. It's in Gabby's.
How would the world be different if we never considered beauty? Do we put too much emphasis on being beautiful?
I think people wouldn't take people for so much for face value, but their actual character. I'm really obsessed with the show Love Is Blind, so.
Wait, did you watch everything the other night already?
Oh yeah, I'm already caught
Me
up.
too.
So, it's kind of that idea of just getting to know the person for who they are and speaking to their soul without actually seeing them. Because if you guys have watched the show or it's like Married at First Sight or any of those, as soon as they see the person, everything just changes and their demeanor changes, the way they treat that person changes. So I feel like we would definitely be different. We would go based off of who they actually are and not what they look like.
I think it depends on, so I'm a beauty girl. I love beauty and all that means, but I think it depends how you define beauty. And I really do, like, for anybody, I know some of you ladies have listened to the podcast, we don't just talk about beauty like, oh, what products are you using? But we really talk about what makes you feel beautiful. What has your journey been like with your skin and with loving yourself? So I think it's important to look at those things because they make you who you are a bit. And like, I don't really want to live in a world where somebody doesn't see my skin because I'm so proud of, where I come from, who I come from. But I think since we do live in a world that sees you, you might as well like emanate beauty from the inside out. But I guess it depends on how you think of beauty. Because to me, I'll tell someone that they're beautiful, but it may not even be because of their makeup or whatever. It's because of the person and the essence. And I think, Afi and Franchella and I were talking about this the other day. Like, beauty is yes, it's how you care for yourself and how you love yourself, but it's also what you put out to people.
Yes,
and so. I guess in my world, in Jasmine's world, that's the definition of beauty, and if that's it, then I want to keep.
And it even reminds me of that singing show when you said they would sing and then they have their chairs behind and
Masked Singer?
Yeah,
The Masked Singer.
yeah, that one too. So I think we're getting into that marketing of like, well, there's a quote that if the world was blind, how many would you impress?
Mm-hmm.
So that. That could be a good writing prompt too, because truly, it could be a lot to think about of like what you're really putting out into the world, more than just face value. I saw this beautiful post on Instagram with on Vogue, and they had full figure models, the supermodels. They said the new regime or something to that point. And I also thought, I was like, well, should we stop using labels? I mean, we're always putting on the beautiful black woman or full-figured models. Is the marketing behind promoting full-figure shapes resonating with consumers? And should we stop using labels?
So I just interviewed a Southeast Asian curve model. Her name's Sharon on the podcast, and I asked her, like, it made me think. This just pops in my head during the interview, which was the same thing you're asking, like. Well, yes, you are Southeast Asian, and I'm sure you're proud of that. And yes, you are a curved model. But do we wish that you didn't have to say curved model? Like, you're a model, period.
Correct.
Like, the amount of, bookings she does and brand deals that she does and, like, the hours this girl put in from, like, waiting tables so that she could make it work to now being, featured in things with Ashley Graham, and being on big brand deals and all those sorts of things. So I think that I hope that we one day live in a world where we don't have to qualify, but I think that we do, and I think that we should because it's something to be proud of. I don't think we should shy away from it, meaning like if you're a curvy model or you're a plus size model, first of all, those terms are kind of interesting because I've learned that there's like, I asked her, they call it straight models, which is what we think of as traditional, like, you know, runway. And then you have curve models, and then I think it's called mid-size models, which is super interesting, but it's interesting that straight, or the default, she says, tends to be like blonde, white, tall, skinny women. And it made me think, like, okay, then why don't we tell them that they're blonde, skinny, white models? Like, why do we have to all qualify? And I think it just goes back to, we have never been the default, right? And if you're not the default, then you're just not considered. And so I hope that right now we can turn that into power for ourselves and be proud of it. And I hope we never lose pride in who we are, because like being curvy is a beautiful thing. Being skinny is also cool, you know? Like there's all these things. Just embrace, you know, who you are. So I guess I hope that we can get to a point where we don't have to, but we are. And I think there's something beautiful. We talked about just like representation, like the fact that young girls, there's not a lot of South Asian women, if you don't know, who go into modeling, because traditionally a lot of families really encourage like going into STEM and engineering. So she talked about like having a lot of pushback from her family and young girls coming up to her crying, being like, I feel like I can do this too. So in a way, I'm like, I know it's a qualifier, but it's pretty cool that somebody feels inspired and somebody feels like they can do something because they identify with you. So I guess I didn't really answer the question, but like I said a lot of things. So yeah.
It's not a bad thing to be proud of who you are. It's just sometimes you can walk into your room like, I'm tired of explaining myself. But then you also have to come from a point of view like, I might be the only person that is able to communicate my background to someone who's willing to learn. So if someone's willing to learn about who I am, I don't see that as a negative.
Totally. I mean, she said she has to go on stage or go into shoots and say like, I'm here, like I'm the plus size model. To me, that's, first of all, like you hired her, so you should know who you hired, right? So that's doesn't make any sense. But so I hope that that doesn't have to happen, and I hope that we start to like see people. We don't have to like talk about it necessarily and qualify and explain why you deserve to be there. I think that's where it gets a little dicey, right? Versus like, I'm prepared for you. We knew we wanted you here.
Yes.
She's talked about like going on stage for clothing shoots, and then they didn't have her size. And they wanted her to model for the brand. It's like, well, you're saying that, you know, that you're here for representing all people, and she wants to be there for that. But if you don't even have the clothes, so I think it's like how you make people feel, even if they are there to kind of represent for a whole community, you know.
What she said.
Yeah. Well, we can move in. You touched into a little bit earlier, Jasmine, about colorism. And colorism, for anyone that may not know, is prejudice or discrimination against individuals with dark skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic or racial group. Have you been personally affected by colorism? Is this still something you encounter today?
So I feel like due to colorism, I get a lot of deeper skin tone women who are hesitant to even book with me because they don't believe that I can do a makeup look on them that's going to be flattering just due to past experiences. So I feel like that's how I have dealt with it. And this happened to me last weekend too. My bride, she was deeper skin tone, and she told me that other people, when I arrived, that they were talking crap, that does she even know how to do your makeup and this and that. And I was like, well, you guys saw the trial. She looked great. Like, I don't ever want people to feel like they have to bring their own foundation because I won't have it, or uncomfortable, or think I'm going to make them look casket ready, as I like to say. Like, never gonna, yeah. Some people are saying. But I just want people to always feel comfortable. So I make it a point to learn how to work with all skin tones, all skin types. Because, yeah, no one should ever have to feel like that.
And you even mentioned it in your tutorial. You knew about Ashy, and you knew different brands that are going to look beautiful on deeper skin tones. And so that even shows that you're willing to learn your craft. Yeah. And so showing that portfolio, that's what's really going to be important, and making people feel relaxed, because that is not a good feeling, right? Because getting your makeup done is supposed to be okay, at least I got that done, right?
Yeah.
So, you showcasing your work, then you'll start getting clients that feel comfortable just booking you no matter what.
Yeah, and I hate it when I show up to, on set with models and they're like, oh, I brought here's all my makeup, or do you have my shade, or here's this, I brought this because they told me a makeup artist was going to be here and I didn't think that, it was going to work out for me. So, yeah, I think that's all obviously due to colorism.
For sure.
Yeah, I think first of all, I immediately when I met you, I felt very like you knew what you were doing. Like you were very, I could tell, but you can tell, right? Like if you're a person of color, if you have darker skin, obviously I'm not as dark as it comes, right? But like if I felt like, oh, I don't know if they're gonna really know what's happening, I felt the whole time I was not concerned. So I just want to say that. But I think it's like preparedness and attention to detail and effort. And like somebody said, I talked to a lot of people, I don't really remember. Somebody said on the podcast, they were like, if you can't do black hair and you can't do black makeup, then you're not a makeup artist, period.
That's
And
what I
so,
tell people.
yeah, so I think like just, like you're just, what are you doing, right? You have to be able to do everybody. I talked to a woman who was talking about, a lot of women will show up on set like models with full kits of their own, their hair done because they don't want to, chance it, which I totally understand. But to answer your question about colorism, I have, and I think I've witnessed it and I've experienced it as well. And I think I talk about it every single day of my life. I think that the colorism, you can see it in a lot of places, right? Like you can see it in the media. You can see that like, okay, finally now we're going to show a person of color, but they're going to be kind of like, we're not really sure if they're a person of color or not. You very rarely see like a deeper skinned black woman like in ads, or a deeper skinned South Asian woman or a Mexican woman. Like you don't see that. And I think that is like subliminal colorism, right? Or it's like people don't even realize what they're doing. They're like, oh, we got a black person. Why doesn't every black person now think this is for them? Right? Or why doesn't every Asian person now realize that we're for them because we saw one person in an ad? And then I think like growing up, you would go to the makeup store, and even still now you go to the makeup store and like it ends at my skin tone. To me, that's unacceptable. And so I think that colorism is subliminal, but then there's also times, out in the world where I would hear people make disparaging comments about people for having dark skin, which to me was like crazy because I was like, oh, I think that skin is so beautiful. But people really internalize these feelings of self-hatred and they project them onto other people. And it's a really unfortunate way to go through the world. And so I think that I've experienced it in a lot of ways, and I think that, from guys saying when I was growing up, like, oh, you're pretty for a black girl, like you couldn't actually be pretty if you were black, so but. Or women asking me like, oh, well, what are you mixed with? I'm black, I'm black, and I'm very proud of it. But I think that like, you have to be mixed with something if you're beautiful. Or, those sorts of comments. Or like, oh, I don't like to date black women, I like to date exotic looking women, right? Those sorts of things, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. So, it's not like I sit around and think about those things every single day, but I think it's just something to think about if you haven't encountered it, or even if you have, that like you're not alone, but that I think the more love we put into ourselves, like who gets to tell you that you're not beautiful? Who decided, right? Like that doesn't even make sense. And so I think we get to redefine and create our own standards of beauty and just live by those. Like I don't really care nobody can really tell me anything about how I feel about myself because that has nothing to do with them, right? It has to do with, and so like I want everybody to feel like that because every single person has beauty in them, in my opinion, and it's just like how you make yourself feel, how you lift yourself up, how you speak life into yourself, and that's what I want to be a part of. So.
Does beauty affect one's success in life?
I feel like it can. I mean, we talk about pretty privilege, so that's a thing, unfortunately. So I feel like being considered pretty or beautiful can get you in the doors, maybe not in the right way a lot of the times, but it happens and it's a thing. So I think it can attribute to people's success in life. But yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Being pretty get you a lot of hate too, so it also depends.
Yeah.
I think it can affect your success in the world. There's actual literal studies, right? Like if you're taller, things that are assigned beautiful, right? If you're taller, if you have fairer skin,
Your
you know,
face
like
is symmetrical or
yes.
yeah.
Well, actually, I read in a study that like most people who are considered conventionally attractive actually have like something unusual about their face that draws people to them, which is very interesting. That's besides the point. My point is that there's all these things that like people ascribe to be beautiful, and there's studies that show like in the workplace they're more likely to get promoted more quickly, things like that. If you're black, if you're lighter skinned than darker skinned, you're more likely to get promoted more quickly or be seen as competent or whatever, like all those sorts of things. So I think it certainly can. But I think it certainly can, but I guess I hope that people, that there's other factors that, I mean, right, I think every single woman in this room is beautiful, but I also see a lot of people of color, so can you tell me that, like, they would be treated fairly versus someone else in every conversation?
Right.
I mean, maybe not, so I think it just depends on your definition of beauty. But I guess it probably helps. But if you're, like, an ugly person on the inside, then I think it all goes away, so,
Definitely.
yeah.
Karma.
Exactly.
Is beauty related to power then? Are beautiful people more powerful?
I don't know. Does everyone feel powerful in here? I don't know. I mean, I think you're powerful when you feel that you're beautiful. Like when you feel confident in yourself, then you command a room. And if you're telling yourself that you're not looking good that day or not feeling good, you're pretty much going to manifest that. So I think power is a lot related to your mindset, how you feel about yourself. And for me, that all is like how I care about myself, who I spend time with, what I listen to. So, I don't know. What do you think, Abby?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I also think that sometimes we attribute like celebrities that are beautiful to have some sort of power. So I think that, you know, relates to it. Or people in higher positions, like, oh, she's beautiful, or you know. So I think that's just how people look at things sometimes. So yeah, I can definitely see that.
You can see a correlation sometimes. Do you think the beauty industry is important? Do we put too much emphasis on how we look or put ourselves out into the world?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you should do whatever makes you feel good and feeds your soul. So if that means putting on, 10 pounds of makeup, then go ahead. So, and I think, I make a living off the beauty industry, so I think it's important. But I also think it gives people an outlet to express themselves in a different way through, the makeup they want to put on, the color they want to wear. So, yeah, I think it's important. But I don't think we take too much time on it because, it makes me feel good, so I think that's worth it.
It's a form of self-care.
Yeah.
I agree with Gabby. I think it depends who's we, right, when we say that. Because, I go on TikTok sometimes, and you see, 16-year-old girls, getting beauty procedures, and you're like,
That is.
I don't know. Maybe that's a bit much, right? I don't know. Who am I to say? But I really do think, investing in yourself, I don't think you can put a price on that. I'm somebody that, I'll invest in my health, I'll invest in my skin, my hair, my nails, not today, don't look at my nails. But it makes me feel good, it makes me feel cared for, it makes me feel like I'm investing in myself, which to me, we are all our own individual, best assets that we have in this life. So to me, I don't think that we do, but I guess it depends why you're doing what you're doing, right? If you're engaging in beauty because you love it, and you're paying for skincare because you love it and you feel like it's going to work for you and you feel like it's going to care for you, then by all means. If you're doing it for somebody else, I guess maybe question that a little bit, because long term I think that can be harmful just mentally.
And I think it's also important when we get people that look like us that are in these positions and building brands, you can understand the issues of what the consumer's looking for that brands have overlooked for such a long time, considering that even to this day, we're still talking about issues that my parents have dealt with, so that part is also frustrating as well. But we have a platform where we can become the pioneers and change that narrative. So I think it's not a negative thing to take care of yourself. It's also a time where you can just have some inner talk. And so for me, if it's not about being vain, I think it's a positive thing that this is how we connect. That's why we did a tutorial before. We're bonding over lashes. I think that's a positive thing and it's beautiful.
I also think like sometimes men will be the ones to be like, that's so vain. I don't think any woman is like, your skincare is vain. You know what I mean?
No.
Like if it makes you feel good, not all men, you know.
Not you,
Not all men. Not all men. Some men will have like amazing skincare routines, right, and really take care of themselves. But sometimes I think, like, basically my point is, if it's something unfamiliar to you, then you'll tend to say like, oh, that's frivolous, right? Or like, why would you spend that money on that? But if it makes you feel like, how about we all show up and not do any of our beauty routines for a month, and then we'll see what everyone has to say. Like, it would be like we would all look like sad. You know, I personally would look sad. Like I would feel sad. You know, so I think it. You know, if you're into it, then you get it. The girls that get it, and if you don't,
They don't.
yeah.
What personality trait is the most important for inner beauty?
Confidence. I feel like if you're just confident in yourself, that will radiate out. And yeah, I feel like even people who aren't deemed like, you know, aesthetically attractive, if that person is confident, I feel like you start to be like, oh, you know, maybe they're a little cute just because they're, you know, exuding that confidence. So yeah, I would say confidence.
That's so funny. I think for me, I think it's like love. And I think like for everybody in this room who I'm friends with and everybody that I even don't know, I feel like there's a lot of love in this room. I feel like when I first think of you, I think of light, I think of love, I think of like warmness. And so I think that's probably one of the most beautiful personality traits, because if you love yourself, it's a lot easier to give that to other people. And I think that ties to confidence too, right? Loving is it requires confidence. Complimenting somebody else, seeing someone else's beauty, supporting somebody else, like you're all doing here for Tiara, like that requires love. So I think to me that's probably the most beautiful. That's what I look for in people and things that I want to be involved in. So
Yeah, there's no mistake. The people that are in the room here are supporting all of us, so it's a beautiful thing. I would like to open up for questions to the crowd for Jasmine or Gabby. Any questions about that you would like to ask them?
How did you choose the name Beauty by the Beauty Village?
Oh, that's a great question. So like I said, Beauty Banal, it's funny. The brand name has been around since before I was born. My parents like got that name a long time ago, and then I was like, I want to do a podcast. I want to start talking about these things, and we brainstormed. And to me and to us, it really represents the beauty of women of color from all parts of the world. And really like the root of where beauty comes from. I think it represents nature. I think it represents natural beauty. I think it represents a range of women. And to me, it just feels like love. It feels like peace. It feels like going back home a little bit. And so that's really what we want to embrace with the brand. And I think that it kind of just fits. I love it. I hope you guys do too.
What's home, by the way?
Home for me, well, that's a loaded question. So, I mean, when I say home in the answer to your question, I meant home in my roots, home as far as my ancestors. I'm a descendant of sharecroppers and slaves, and I am, so I'm African, but I don't really know all the things, right? But I think home for me is where I feel loved. Home for me is the history behind my skin, where I come from, and I think that the beautiful thing is, like, if you check out the brand, if you check out all the women who've been a part of it, they're not all black, black, South Asian, Southeast Asian, Mexican, Cuban, all these things. And I think one of the things that's most beautiful to me is just there's so much diversity in that, and that everybody feels represented by the name and by the mission, because everybody can relate to the things that we're talking about. Everybody can relate to love. Everybody can relate to having at one point felt insecure about their brown skin, and so that's what we're trying to evoke with the brand. But I'm from California. Originally.
Okay, ladies, how do you embrace your individuality?
I embrace my individuality by just showing up as, my authentic self every day. I know that's kind of a cliche saying, but it's true. And just willing to show all of the facets of my personality and not be apologetic about it. So if I'm being really weird, I'm being really weird one day. If I'm being quiet, I'm being quiet. And just showing myself grace also, because we're all human and we're all different. So yeah, just be yourself, and if they don't like it, then who cares?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
that's such a good question. I think Aisha and I were talking about this once. Like, I think I just spend a lot of time with who I want to spend time with. I spend time with people who lift me up, and I try to do that for them. I do things that I enjoy. I think, honestly, and we've talked about this. Afi and I were talking at our last shoot. I get emotional about this, but, like, Beauty of the Nile, I think, is a representation of that for me. Doing the podcast and talking to women, like, no matter how I feel on that day, reminds me why we're doing what we're doing and who you're touching. And so to me, my individuality in a lot of ways, it's kind of, we talked before, it's kind of like your baby. And so my individuality in a lot of ways is a representation of the brand and the podcast. And so for me, I spend a lot of time on Beauty of the Nile, which I know that you know. I spend a lot of time on the podcast, and I spend a lot of time with people who support me in whatever I'm doing, and I try to give that to them. And I care for myself. I spend a lot of time on skincare. I hope every person uses our products as much as I do, because we will sell out. I use them a lot, and I just try to do things that make me happy. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does make sense.
it makes sense in here.
Yeah. We're all here. We understand. Jasmine, you had mentioned earlier that you found a lot in your beauty journey from your parents. And then, Gabby, you mentioned confidence. Where did you get that confidence from in being the woman that you are today?
I think my parents and my grandma had a lot to do with it, because growing up, my dad too, he texted me on my way here. He was like, be yourself, don't be nervous, you got this. And I was like, okay, thanks. But I think that was always instilled in me, just like, you got this, and you are you, and you can do it. So I feel like growing up, I've tried to be confident. I mean, we're all human, and we all have those moments when we're not, but just kind of, reeling it back in and being like, I'm that girl, and just, yeah.
What advice would you give to people who may not have supportive families into embracing their individuality and just noticing that they are beautiful? What advice would you give that person who is lacking the confidence to navigate anything that they're trying to accomplish?
I feel like finding a community, surrounding yourself with good people who will uplift you. Because I know a lot of people don't have, the best upbringing, and they lack that confidence or have low self-esteem. But I feel like once you find your tribe, like you feel like you can conquer the world. So, yeah.
I agree with everything you said. What she said? No. I was gonna say too, like, my dad used to say this. For everybody who has met my dad, this will make a lot of sense. He used to say to me, sometimes you have to I know, I love him. Sometimes you have to believe in somebody else's belief in you until your own kicks in. And I think that was really true. He was talking about sports at the time. I used to be an athlete, but yeah. But I think it applies to a lot of things. Like, find, like you said, your community or people or things that make you feel good. And if it doesn't make you feel good, everybody who knows me here knows, if it doesn't make me feel good, I have no problem exiting stage left. And so I think, like, just try to gravitate towards things that are positive. I realize that I'm super blessed to have parents that I love, that I want to do a business with, right? And I know that everybody doesn't have that. But I think, like, to the extent you can find people who see the light in you and see the love in you, and just go towards that. And if it's not that, then keep it pushing is what I would say. Yeah.
Those are both beautiful responses, and I think that those are action items. Like, you can just do one good thing for yourself in the day and just let that be a win. So for sure, that's great advice. Does anyone else have any more questions? We're going to wrap up the panel we have with our beautiful ladies. Gabby and Jasmine, any more questions? Going once?
You can never speak to us again if you don't have to.
Well, you should follow them on Instagram. We have glamby_NUA, and then Jasmine will be at Beauty of the Nile. I do want to do a quick shout out first. Colleen Quinn, thank you so much for styling myself and Gabby for today. That took a relief off of me, so thank you so much. Colleen Quinn, Style by CQ. So there's a lot of amazing people here, so let's mingle a little bit more, connect IG and everything, and get some photos. with the amazing Jeff Otto. Thank you for all the men that are here today supporting us. It's really
We love
important.
you. We think
Josh,
you can do skincare too.
yes! Josh Barnes for videography, Jeff Otto for photography. We have Brenton supporting us, and Chauncey, and Teddy, my friend, acting friend Teddy. Thank you all for being here. And then this is wrapping up, International Women's History Month, right? And we had International Women's Day, so let's celebrate being a woman. Thank you all again for being here.
Those hoops don't want to stay.
They're pretty though. Oh yeah.